Namo Buddhaya, the Satasahasrika Prajnaparamita Sutram, the Large Sutra on Perfect Wisdom, the chapter 32nd, the distinction of merit, very weak. If someone, Kauśika, had established one single being in the fruit of the Streamwinner, he would thereby beget an infinite merit, but not so if he had established all the beings in Jambudvipa in the 10 ways of the wholesome actions. And why? Because beings established in the 10 ways of wholesome actions are not liberated from rebirth in the hells among animals in the worlds of Yama or among the Asuras, whereas those who have been established in the fruit of a Streamwinner are liberated from all such rebirths. Weekly medium. Compared with establishing beings of Jambudvipa in the 10 ways of wholesome action, someone would beget the greater merit if he were to establish one single being in the fruit of aOnce-Returner, moderately medium, or in the fruit of a never-returner, stronger medium, or in an arhatship, weakly strong, or in the establishment of a Pratika Buddha, medium strong, and if one person were to establish the beings of Jambudvipa in the fruit of a Streamwinner, and another were to establish one single being in the Supreme Enlightenment, then the latter would beget the great merit. And why? Because he is concerned with the non-interruption of the guide of the Buddhas. Strong. And just so, if one person were to establish all the beings in Jambudvipa in the fruit of aOnce-Returner and another were to establish one single being in the Supreme Enlightenment, then the latter would beget the greater merit. Eulogy. Very weak. And the same applies to the fruit of a never-returner, moderately weak, to arhatship, fairly weak, and to the enlightenment of a Pratika Buddha. And why? Because the one who establishes even one single being in the Supreme Enlightenment is concerned with the non-interruption of the guide of the Buddhas. And why? Because from the Bodhisattvas have come forth all the Tathagatas that there are. By this method also one should know that the Bodhisattvas should be worshipped, adored, honored, and revered with flowers, etc., to banners, by the world with its gods, Maras, Brahmins, etc., to this world with its Shamanas and Brahmins. Weekly medium. Someone who would establish as many beings as there are in Jambudvipa in the 10 paths of wholesome actions, and do you think Kauśika would he on the strength of that beget a great deal of merit? Chakra, a great deal, O Lord, a great deal, or Sugata, the Lord, someone who would give this book on perfect wisdom to someone else so that he may read, copy, or recite it would beget a merit greater than that. And why? Because here, in this perfection of wisdom, I expounded in detail those dharmas without outflows through which those who train themselves therein have entered into the certainty of salvation, do and will enter into it, etc., through which they have attained arhatship and the enlightenment of a Pratika Buddha, do and will attain it, through which the Bodhisattvas, the great beings, have entered into a Bodhisattva's way of salvation, do and will enter it, etc., through which they have fully known the Atma's right and perfect enlightenment, do and will fully know it, and which Kauśika are the dharmas without outflows. They are the 6 perfections, the 37 wings of enlightenment and 4 truths, the 18 kinds of emptiness and 10 powers of a Tathagata, the 4 grounds of self-confidence, the 4 analytical knowledges, the 18 special Buddha dharmas, the great friendliness, the great compassion, the great sympathetic joy, the great impartiality, and the infinite Buddha dharmas, and they are all here expanded in detail by the Tathagatas. By this method also, Kauśika, should one know that someone who has copied this book on perfect wisdom and gives it to someone else to be read, copied, and recited, would begin the great merit compared with the one who established the beings of Jambudvipa in the 10 paths of wholesome action. And why? Because in this perfection of wisdom are expounded in detail all the dharmas by which good warrior families are conceived, etc., to the gods, etc., to the applications of mindfulness, etc., to the Tathagatas, the Arhats, the fully enlightened Buddhas. Leaving aside Kauśika, the beings in Jambudvipa, as many beings as there are in the 4-continent world system, If someone were to establish them in the 10 paths of wholesome actions, what do you think, Kauśika? Would that person, on the strength of that, beget such merit? Chakra. Much, O Lord, much, O Sugata, the Lord. Compared with him, someone would beget the greater merit if he would give this book on perfect wisdom to someone else to be read, copied, or recited. And why? For the same reason as before, leaving aside, Kauśika, the beings in a four-continent world system, as many beings as there are in the small chili cosmos, etc. as before, leaving aside, Kauśika, the small chili cosmos, as many beings as there in the medium chili cosmos. If someone were to establish them all in the 10 paths of wholesome actions, etc., to in particular Buddhahood, what do you think, Kauśika? Would that person, on the strength of that, beget much merit? Chakra. Much, O Lord, much, O Sugata, the Lord. Someone else will beget the greater merit if he gives a copy of this perfection of wisdom to someone else who at least reads and recites it. Leaving aside, Kauśika, the beings in the medium Dritili cosmos who have been established in everything up to the enlightenment of a particular Buddha, if someone were to establish all the beings in a greater Dritili cosmos in the 10 paths of wholesome action, etc., to in the enlightenment of a particular Buddha, and if someone else were to give a copy of this perfection of wisdom to others, even only for them to read and recite it, then the latter begets the greater merit. Leaving aside the beings in a great Dritili cosmos, if someone had established all the beings in the countless world system in the 10 directions, in the 10 paths of wholesome actions, etc., to in particular Buddhahood, and if someone else were to give a copy of this perfection of wisdom to someone else, if only to read and recite it, then the latter would beget the greater merit. And why? Because here in this perfection of wisdom I expounded in detail, etc., to the Tathagatas, the Arhats, the fully enlightened Buddhas. Moreover, Kauśika, if someone were to establish the beings of Jambudvipa in the 4 trances, the 4 unlimited, the 4 formless attainments, or the 5 super knowledges, would he, on the strength of that, beget much merit? Chakra. Much, Lord, much, Sugata, the Lord. Someone else will beget the greater merit if he gives a copy of this perfection of wisdom to someone other person, although the person only reads and recites it. And why? Because they're in the Dharmas without outlaws are expounded in detail. Moreover, if someone were to take up this perfection of wisdom, bear it in mind, recite and study it, and wisely attend to it, then he will have begotten a greater merit than someone else who had established the beings in the world system of any size in the 10 paths of wholesome actions, in the trances, unlimited and formless attainments. And here the wise attention consists in that one takes up, etc., to wisely attends to this perfection of wisdom without coursing in duality towards enlightenment, and that without coursing in duality towards enlightenment one takes up, etc., to wisely attends to the other perfections, the emptinesses, etc., to the knowledge of all modes, moderately medium. Moreover, if someone were to demonstrate the perfection of wisdom in many ways to others, were to explain it in detail, develop it, comment and enlarge on it, and expound its meaning, and if someone else would show the meaning of this perfection of wisdom by way of non-duality, not through duality, not through sign or signless, not through toiling or the withdrawal from it, not through aiding or subtracting anything, not through defilement or purification, not through production or stopping, not through appropriation or non-appropriation, not through stability or instability, not through what is real or unreal, not through junction or non-junction, with nothing omitted or non-omitted, not through conditions or non-conditions, not through Dharma or non-Dharma, not through suchness or non-suchness, not through the reality limit or the non-reality limit, then that son or daughter of good family will beget the greater merit who would explain this perfection of wisdom in detail to others, who would study, demonstrate, and develop it, and who would enlarge on it and would expound its meaning, and his merit will be much greater than that of the one who only for himself takes it up, bears it in mind, recites and studies it, and wisely attends to it. Strongly medium. Moreover, someone who explains the perfection of wisdom to others will beget the greater merit than someone who only studies it by and for himself. chakra. So it is, O Lord, so it is, O Sugata, the Lord. It is thus so that someone should expound the perfection of wisdom, both its meaning and its letters. When he does so, he will be endowed with an immeasurable, incalculable, and infinite heap of merit, weakly strong. If someone would during his entire life honor the countless Tathagatas in each one of the 10 directions with what brings them ease, revere and worship them with flowers, etc., and if someone else would demonstrate this perfection of wisdom to others by various methods and in some detail and would instruct them in its meaning, then the latter begets the greater merits. And why? Because as a result of having trained in this perfection of wisdom, do the Tathagatas of the past, future, and present know full enlightenment. Medium strong. Greater still is the merit of someone who for endless kalpas explains the six perfection to others, and that without taking anything as a basis. What then is a basis? When someone gives a gift while taking something as a basis, it occurs to him that I give a gift. This gift I give. I will abide in the given gifts to others. But this is not the perfection of giving. No, it is the perfection of morality to think that this is morality. I'm moral. Those beings I will protect. No, it is the perfection of passions to think that I make an effort to be patient. I endure this because of someone else. I will abide in these passions. No, it is the perfection of wisdom to think that I develop wisdom. This is wisdom. For the sake of those, I will abide in this wisdom. For someone who curses in a basis cannot fulfill any of the perfections, chakra. How then must the bodhisattva course so that he can fulfill the six perfections, the Lord? Here a bodhisattva, when he gives a gift, does not apprehend the gift, the donor or the recipient. This is called the perfection of giving. He doesn't apprehend morality, those of good conduct or a being. That is called the perfection of morality. He doesn't apprehend passions, that which has to be endured, or one who is patient. That is called the perfection of passions. He doesn't apprehend vigor, body or thought. That is called the perfection of vigor. He doesn't apprehend trance, no one who experiences the trance, nor that which should be experienced in trance. That is called the perfection of meditation. He doesn't apprehend wisdom, no one who is wise, nor that which should be known by wisdom. This is called the perfection of wisdom. When a bodhisattva courses thus, he can fulfill the six perfections. It is thus that someone should, without basing himself on anything, expound the six perfections complete in meaning and letters. And why? Because in a future period there will arise some sons and daughters of good family who will expound a counterfeit perfection of wisdom. Also, for the sake of those who have set out for the supreme enlightenment and who hear this counterfeit perfection of wisdom, should this perfection of wisdom be expounded, complete in meaning and letters. Chakra. What is this counterfeit perfection of wisdom? The Lord. Here some son or daughter of good family may promise to expound this perfection of wisdom, but in fact will expound the counterfeit perfection of wisdom. And what they explain is that form and everything else is impermanent, ill, not self and repulsive, and that those who will course in this insight course in the perfection of wisdom. As a result, those to whom this has been explained will strive to win this insight. But in fact, the counterfeit of wisdom has been explained and practiced. Moreover, some will expound the perfection of wisdom by saying, "Come here, you son of good family, and develop the perfection of wisdom and the other perfections. When you do so, you will be able to stand on the first, etc., to the 10th stage. But they will develop the perfection of wisdom by way of a sign, by way of a basis through the perfection of the knowledge of almost. This is the counterfeit perfection of wisdom. Moreover, those sons and daughters of good family will explain as follows. Come here, you son of good family, develop the perfection of wisdom. When you do so, you will transcend the level of the disciples and particular Buddhas. This is the counterfeit perfection of wisdom. Moreover, those sons and daughters of good family, when they explain the perfection of wisdom to followers of the great vehicle, will explain as follows. Come here, you son of good family, develop the perfection of wisdom. When you do so, you will enter on a bodhisattva's special way of salvation. This is the counterfeit perfection of wisdom. Moreover, they will explain the perfection of wisdom as follows. Come here, you son of good family, develop the perfection of wisdom. When you do so, you will acquire the passion acquiescence in dharmas which fail to be produced, and in consequence, you will stand in the super knowledges of a bodhisattva, which will enable you to pass on from Buddha fila to Buddha fila, so that you may there honor, revere, and worship the Buddhas and the Lords. When you explain it like this, they explain the counterfeit perfection of wisdom. Moreover, when they explain the perfection of wisdom to followers of the Bodhisattva vehicle, they will explain as follows: whoever takes up the perfection of wisdom, etc., to wisely attends to it, he will beget an infinite heap of merit. When they explain it like this, they explain the counterfeit perfection of wisdom. Moreover, they will say to followers of the Bodhisattva vehicle, come here, son of good family. Take all the wholesome root of the Tathagatas of the past, future, and present, from the first thought of enlightenment to their entry into parinirvana, in the element of nirvana which leaves nothing behind. Rejoice at it, pile it up into one single heap and dedicate it to the supreme enlightenment. Then they explain it like this. They explain the counterfeit perfection of wisdom, chakra. What then do those explain who explain to those who have set out in their bodhisattva vehicle a perfection which is not counterfeit? The Lord. Here the sons and daughters of good family explain to those who have set out in the bodhisattva vehicle the perfection of wisdom as follows. Come here, son of good family. When you develop the perfection of wisdom, you should not look upon form, etc., to all knowledge as impermanent. And why? Because form is empty of the own being of form, etc. That is the own being of form, etc. That is non-existence. And what is non-existent, that is the perfection of wisdom, which doesn't describe form, etc., as permanent or impermanent. And why? Because even form, etc., doesn't exist therein. How much less can there be permanence or impermanence? Furthermore, they will say, come here, son of good family, develop the perfection of wisdom but do not look at any dharma or rely on one. And why? Because in the perfection of wisdom there exists no dharma which should be seen or in which one should seek support. And why? Because all dharmas are empty in their own being, and a dharma which is empty in its own being, that is non-existence, and that is non-existent. That is the perfection of wisdom, which is not of any dharma, the toiling or withdrawal from it, the production or stop, and the annihilation or eternity, the single or multiple meaning, the coming or going away. Therefore, then, one should describe the meaning of the perfection of wisdom in this way. When one explains it in this way, one begets a greater merit than the previously described persons. Strongly strong. Moreover, Kauśika, if someone were to establish the beings of Jambudvipa and fruit of a Streamwinner, would beget much merit. Chakra, he would, the Lord. A merit greater than this will he beget, who explains this perfection of wisdom complete in meaning and letters to others by various methods. And in doing so, he will say, come here, son of good family, take up the perfection of wisdom, study it, bear it in mind, recite it, wisely attend to it, and make progress in the perfection of wisdom as it has been expounded. And why? Because from this perfection of wisdom, the Streamwinner and his fruit become manifest, leaving aside all beings who have been disciplined in the fruit of Streamwinner, in Jambudvipa, or in a four-continent world system, or in a small Chichilicosm, or in a small Chichilicosm, or in a medium Chichilicosm, or in a great Chichilicosm. If someone would establish in all the countless world system, in all the 10 directions, all beings in the fruit of a Streamwinner, would he, on the strength of that, beget much merit? Chakra, he would, the Lord. A merit greater than that will he beget, who explains this perfection of wisdom to others in detail, complete in meaning and letters, and who says to them, come here, son of good family. Take up the perfection of wisdom, study it, bear it in mind, recite it, wisely attend to it, and make progress in the perfection of wisdom as it has been expounded. And why? Because from this perfection of wisdom has the Streamwinner become manifest. Glorification. Very weak. Moreover, Kauśika, if someone were to establish all beings in Jambudvipa in the fruit of a once-returner, moderately weak, or of a never-returner, very weak, or in a hardship, would be on account of that beget much merit. Chakra, he would, O Lord. the Lord. A merit greater than that. And why? Because from this perfection of wisdom have the fruits of a once-returner and of a never-returner, as well as arhatship been conceived, leaving aside the beings of Jambudvipa who have been disciplined in the three higher fruits. In the same were done to all beings in world system of any size. In all world system would one on the strength of the beget a great deal of merit. Chakra. One would, O Lord, the Lord, a merit greater than that, arhatship been conceived. Weekly medium. Likewise, if all beings everywhere were established in practical Buddhahood, the merit from this perfection of wisdom would be the greater, moderately medium. Moreover, Kauśika, if someone were to instigate all the beings in Jambudvipa to win the supreme enlightenment, would be on the strength of that beget much merit. Chakra. He would, O Lord, the Lord, a merit greater than that, and make progress in the perfection of wisdom as it has been expounded. And to the extent that you progress in the perfection of wisdom as it has been expounded, to that extent you will become a recipient of all knowledge. To the extent that all knowledge matures in you, to that extent will the perfection of wisdom more and more move in you towards the fulfillment of the development. To the extent that the perfection of wisdom moves in you towards the fulfillment of its development, to that extent you will know the supreme enlightenment. And why? Because from this have come forth all the bodhisattvas who anywhere have raised their hearts to full enlightenment, strongly medium. And so with the beings in a fourth continental world system, weakly strong, a small chilicosm, medium strong, a medium dichilicosm, a great chilicosm, or all the world systems everywhere, strongly strong. Moreover, if someone were to establish all beings in Jambudvipa, etc., to in all world system on the irreversible level, then someone else would beget the greater merit if he were to explain to all these beings this perfection of wisdom complete in meaning and letters, and if he would say, "Come here, son of good family, take up this perfection of wisdom," etc., to make progress in the perfection of wisdom as it has been expounded, to the extent that you have made progress in the perfection of wisdom as it has been expounded, to that extent do you, train in the perfection of wisdom, stand in irreversibility, and you will gradually know the supreme enlightenment. When you train in perfect wisdom, then you will be one who obtains the dharmas of all knowledge. When you obtain the dharmas of all knowledge, then you will know the supreme enlightenment. Furthermore, if someone were to establish all beings in Jambudvipa, etc., to in all world system in irreversibility from the supreme enlightenment, and were to explain to them the perfection of wisdom complete in meaning and letters, and if among them one single one were to say, "I will quickly fully know the supreme enlightenment," then to explain to him the perfection of wisdom complete in meaning and letters would beget the great merit. And why? Because it is to these irreversible bodhisattvas that the full meaning of the Dharma should be expounded, for they are definitely distant for full enlightenment and bound to end up in it. They find a way to get out of samsara, but they are quite filled with great compassion and therefore will stay in it. Winding up the topic of the divisions into weak, etc. Chakra. To the extent, O Lord, that the bodhisattva comes nearer to full enlightenment, to that extent he should be instructed and admonished in the 6 perfections, the 18 kinds of emptiness, the applications of mindfulness, etc., to the 18 special dharmas of a Buddha, having been held with robes, amphoras, lodgings, and medicinal appliances for use in sickness, such as bodhisattva should be helped with both material and spiritual things. For someone who helps with both material and spiritual things beget the greater merit. And why? Because it so happens that the bodhisattva is instructed and admonished in the 6 perfections, etc., to in the 18 special dharmas of a Buddha. Subhuti. Well said, Kauśika, you who fortify those who belong to the bodhisattva vehicle. Even so should you act. Those holy disciples who want to help beings give help to the bodhisattvas. The great beings help them in their wish for the supreme enlightenment and maintain them with both material and spiritual things. And why? For here, the congregation of the Lord's disciples has its origin, as well as the vehicle of the Pratyeka and the great vehicle. For if the Bodhisattva had not raised his thought to supreme enlightenment, then he would not have trained in the 6 perfections, etc., in the 18 special dharmas of the Buddha, and not having trained in those dharmas, he would not have fully known the supreme enlightenment, and in the consequence, there would be no conception of the supreme enlightenment, nor of the enlightenment of a Pratyeka Buddha, nor of the enlightenment of a disciple. But because the Bodhisattva trains himself in the 6 perfections, etc., and in all dharmas, therefore he fully knows the supreme enlightenment, cuts off in all world system the hells, the animal births, and the sphere of the ghost, and there is a manifestation in the world of good warrior families, good Brahmins families, good householder families of the various kinds of gods, of the perfections, etc., of all knowledge, and of the vehicle of the disciples, the vehicle of the Pratyeka Buddhas, and the great vehicle. This is the end of 32nd chapter of the large sutra on perfect wisdom, the Satasahasrika Prajnaparamita Sutram.